Right, good morning, welcome back. Now today on the big Heritage Softail, rear brake fluid change. Easy little task, shouldn't take long at all. And just one point, if you follow our channel video by video, first of all, thank you so much for that. You'll already know that we're doing all of the fluid changes. All the oil's going to do the full coil after this and everything, the whole lot's being done. So you might have seen a lot of this done already. But there will be people who happen across this video just because they want a little bit of a tip or some information on a rear brake fluid change on their Softail, and they haven't watched the rest of the series. So for those of you loyal long-term viewers, please bear with us. Some of the information today might be repeated from previous videos just in order to make this one all the more comprehensive. I hope you understand. Now, as I think we all know by now, DOT4, glycol-based fluid, brake fluid, is hydroscopic and absorbs water, which after 2 years means it must be changed. We all know that as part of your service procedure. If you look in your handbook even, it will have the service procedure. Most of it's on mileage, but the brake fluid is always on time. 2 years it should be changed, because over that 2-year period, the brake fluid itself will absorb water from the atmosphere, from humidity. It will become waterlogged, and therefore it will need changing, because water in your braking system can cause problems. Problems I've stated in the past, such as it can corrode the internals inside the system, and obviously if that water content works its way all the way down to the brake caliper on the back of the pistons, imagine how hot that gets. If there's any water in there, that can turn into steam, present a steam jacket to the back of the piston, which makes the brakes spongy, and that's known as brake fade, which is all bad. So you must change that fluid on cue every 2 years. I think you know that. But with some Harley Davidsons, they don't use the DOT4 glycol-based fluid, they use DOT5 silicone-based fluid, and that's entirely different. So as it's such a separate subject, I'll save it for the end of the video, because I want to get on with this brake fluid change for those of you who actually tuned in to know how to change the brake fluid on your Heritage. Oh, and just one point before I get stuck into this. If your system's fully plumbed up, like this one, and working, it's actually really easy to bleed it through, as you'll see in a second. But if it's not, you just change the brake hose and it's just empty, there's no fluid in it at all. If you've ever tried that, it can be tricky to bleed those up for the first time. And we covered that just recently in a video showing 3 different ways to plumb up a hydraulic system. So I'll leave a link to that video below if you need it. But for today, honestly, this is as easy as it gets. Now with Harley Davidson motorcycles, they use both DOT4 and DOT5 brake fluid in different bikes, and never the two should be mixed, ever. It's quite dangerous, and we'll cover that a little bit more at the end. So it's very important before you set about doing this job to make sure you buy the right brake fluid, and the information you need can be found on the cap just here. It makes it abundantly clear exactly which fluid to use, and in this case it's DOT4. Now, if you've ever done this job yourself, you'll probably already know that the screws that hold these caps down are usually very tight. They're very soft and fragile and easily chewed out. So a correctly fitting screwdriver is essential. And in this case, it doesn't need a JIS because it's an American bike. You just need a regular Phillips number 2, PH2 screwdriver. Pop it in the slot, make sure that's a nice tight fit, and then the usual procedure. Grab hold of it nice and tight, press down as hard as you can, and crack them free. All right, let's see if that fluid is waterlogged. Okay, 3%, not as bad as it could have been, but that's still a red light, so it's still a fail. Okay, same procedure as before. Suck out that old stuff, put some fresh fluid in, and then pump it through. And now it's the usual procedure. Press down on the pedal, open the valve, shut the valve, let the pedal up, and repeat, and repeat, and repeat. There, now with the exception of taking the panny bag off so I can get the camera in and film it better, it's otherwise 2 screws and 1 bleed valve. 15 minutes of your life in real time with the most basic of equipment, once every 2 years. So honestly, I cannot understand for the life of me why it is so often neglected as badly as it is. Brake fluid, get it changed on cue every time. Anyway, one last final word if I may, on DOT4 versus DOT5 brake fluid. If you don't know the difference, a couple of do's and don'ts that could save you some problems. Right, now first of all, I don't want to teach anybody how to suck eggs, so if you know all about this, then please bear with me. I'm pitching this purely at those who've never heard of the difference before and wonder what it's all about. Right, just a quick cheeky chemistry lesson, if I may. DOT4 is a glycol-based fluid that is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture from the atmosphere like a sponge. It just literally takes the humidity and it turns it into water content. That's why it needs changing every 2 years. But DOT5, on the other hand, that is a silicon-based fluid and it doesn't absorb water in any way. In fact, even if you pour water into it, it just separates and sits on top. So that is how different they actually are. Next, a short history lesson. Back in the days of black and white, Harley Davidson always used DOT5 silicon brake fluid in all their bikes right the way across the range until ABS brakes came along. And they discovered that the thicker, more viscous, gloopy nature of silicon DOT5 fluid would clog up the ABS modules. It wouldn't work properly on ABS bikes. So for those, they had to use DOT4 fluid. And to further complicate matters, this bike's a 2008 and it doesn't have ABS, but it still uses DOT4 fluid. It says it on the caps. I can only imagine it's a production line thing because this bike the following year, the 2009 model, it did have ABS. So it's right on that changeover. Perhaps they changed over the fluid slightly before the systems themselves. Who knows? Perhaps it's just a production line thing. But it proves the point that it's critical to read the cap and make sure you're using the right fluid. Because if you get it wrong, that can be all bad. Now this cannot be overstated enough. You must never mix glycol DOT4 fluid and silicon DOT5 fluid together. If you pour them both into a jar, they repel each other. One will sit on top of the other. They absolutely don't mix. And whilst you might think that's not necessarily a dangerous problem, it does become one when you put that mixture under pressure. Under pressure, the silicon half of the mixture turns into a thick, sticky substance, a little bit like the stuff you squirt out of a tube of silicon in your bathroom, that stuff. Can you imagine that inside your braking system? And can you imagine the havoc that that's going to cause? In the calipers, that thick, sticky snot can't get out of the caliper when you release the brakes, so effectively they jam on. And even worse, in the master cylinder, that main seal inside your master cylinder, the one that's like a skirt, if that's pushing against that thick, sticky stuff and you give it a big handful, it's going to turn that seal back on itself and jam it solid inside the master cylinder. So obviously that's how serious it is, and in order to be sure, read the cap. It says it on it, DOT4 or DOT5 fluid only. It's a warning, it says it clearly. But if you read your cap and it says live to ride Eagle Spirit, then you've got a problem. You're going to have to determine it by another means, and here's one that works every time. Just get a dab of the fluid between your finger and thumb, and if it's DOT4, it will creak like that, like it's dry. It's quite weird. DOT5 is more like oil, like a lubricant. It's slippery. Doesn't judder at all. DOT4, DOT5. Very distinct difference. But if you're not sure and you're still worried about it, then take it to a professional, somebody you trust, to determine it for you, and then make a note of it in your service history so you can do it right in the future. Because something like this, mixing these up, it's a mistake you don't want to make. So that's it for today. Fork oil next, which will be the last of the fluids, and then we can get on to the hard stuff. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.